Welcome back to the Daily Bible Reading Group. So glad that you are here with us today. It is day 51 of our crawl through Ephesians that we're doing in January and February of 2022. I'm Bruce Taylor, your host, and you're all very, very welcome. Today, we are going to go through a few verses in Ephesians chapter 6. We're going to cover verses 5 through 8. Now, for some of you, you're going to read this right away and go, what on earth does this have to do with us? This is about bondservants, or some of your translations might say slaves. And already there will be somebody in your life that might say, oh, see, the Bible, it's pro-slavery, man. Stay away from that stuff. That's not true. That is not true at all. First off, when people are talking to you in our day and age today about slavery, they are talking about those who, against their will, are taken, essentially kidnapped. Often they are abused and tortured and forced into labor situations of one form or another. They are often bought and sold and trafficked around the world for a variety of purposes. Historically, this has happened in a variety of contexts throughout history, in a variety of places. It is not something new. But more and more, we fight against it. We try and stop it. We have all sorts of organizations and law enforcement that work against slavery and human trafficking, and so we should. Okay? I do not believe in any way ever that honors God. That's why I like when the translations use words like bondservants, because it helps you understand what is being talked about here. The context of the bondservant is the one who, because of their own financial situation, places themselves in, basically, it's like a voluntary servanthood, a voluntary slavery, but there's a financial arrangement attached to it. So, for instance, if I had debt that needed to be paid and I couldn't figure out how to pay it, I could basically sell myself into service for, say, 7 years or something like that. And the person making the deal with me says, okay, you do that and I'll pay your debts. Okay. Now, in specifically in Old Testament Israel, they had some specific rules around this. And they were really good rules, like after 7 years, you had to set your bondservants free. You had to, that's it. You weren't allowed to have them for life. But if that bondservant was like, I really like what I'm doing. This guy's great to work for. We have a great relationship. He's really kind of welcomed me into the family. That then I would actually have the option to say to them, no, actually, I'd like to stay. And they could basically bring me into a permanent status with that. But again, this is nothing like, oh, somebody got taken from their home and their village, were either taken or slaughtered, and they've now been forced into, this is nothing like that. Okay? Because in order to become a bond servant, you were willingly entering into a contractual type agreement. Okay? Now, that being the case, it also was not our modern workplace with some of the protections that are in place today. Okay? You were still seen as a servant. Therefore, especially, this is to the Ephesians. In the Roman Empire, they didn't necessarily have the protections that they would have in Israel. Okay? So your earthly masters could have been abusive, and that would have been seen as okay in the culture because you were only a bondservant. Okay? Not necessarily in that Roman culture, they also would have had slaves that would have been maybe taken captive in battle or things like that. The bond servants were something else. Okay, so this is written about bond servants, and it is written in a context whereby they might be in a harsh situation. Okay, it does not say Bondservants, who are brothers in Christ, although that's who it's talking to, obey your earthly masters who are fellow brothers in Christ with a sincere heart as you would Christ. No. Bondservants, who are my brothers in Christ, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling with a sincere heart as you would Christ. Even if your earthly masters are not nice, evil, sinful people. Whoa, really? Yeah. Why? Well, what does it say? Let's bump it up. So this isn't just what's seen, eye service, not just something that makes you look good in the eyes, not just a people pleaser. In other words, responding a certain way depending on who's around, who's watching, who's taking it in. No, as bond servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or free. In other words, we need to understand and apply this with when you are working for somebody. And you might be saying, hold it. Are you saying I'm a bondservant because I go to work? Well, have you entered into a contract with somebody else for an amount of money for an amount of your time and service? Yes, you have. Um, and so, what's our attitude? Are we those that are going to respect our supervisor, our manager, our boss, the owner of the company? Are we going to walk with sincerity? Are we going to work hard, not just to look good, but because we are serving Jesus? It's part of your testimony, part of how you serve God from the heart, because you're serving the Lord. What you want is your boss to be like, man, you got any friends at your church? I know you go to church. You got any friends at your church looking for a job? And you'd be like, I might, because if they're anything like you, I'll take 10 more. That's what you want. That's a testimony. That makes that boss think, wow, whatever you got going on with your faith, it seems to me like it's affected how much you do good work here, how much you care about your job, how much you pay attention. I don't get any grief from you. I don't get trouble from you. You show up on time. You are respectful. You work well with everybody else. You do good. And even if your boss doesn't ever recognize that, God sees it. What's your attitude of heart, right? What's it really about, right? Well, it's really about living out your faith in your context. That's why tomorrow we're going to talk to the quote unquote masters. We hate that word, right? But we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And it's important because these are, again, bigger picture things. How do we relate to other people? How do we relate to people that are placed in authority over us? How do we relate to people that we place ourselves under their authority? And may we do all of that, remembering that we are actually serving Christ. Anyways, we'll leave you with that for today, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.